Hey guys, my name is Mitsumiyo, and welcome to our episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you'd like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question that comes from Adam, and it is, so I've noticed that Warden seems to be a bit underwhelming. Perhaps letting him be the first offender to use smoke nades would make him better. So you are definitely not the only one that has made this suggestion. It seems like a lot of people like the idea of giving him access to this nade type, even though it would be a bit weird because he would be the first offender that had access to this kind of gadget. And I can see where you're coming from. Right now, Warden is very reactionary. His entire kit revolves off of what the offensive team brings to the table. If they don't actually use smokes or flashes, his gadget's basically useless. He just pretty much just becomes a worse Valkyrie. Even if offense does decide to put down a smoke screen, a lot of times Warden isn't able to take advantage of it because of a lot of limiting factors. First of all, offense is going to be putting down a nade in a position that is helpful to them and not to the defensive side. I cannot tell you how many times I got really excited while playing as Warden because I saw a smoke go down. I then had to move out into the open because the angle that I was covering wasn't able to actually see through the said smoke screen. That left me vulnerable to a completely different angle, and then the offensive team was able to take me promptly out after that. Because I myself isn't the person that's placing down the actual smoke, I'm not able to actually put it where I need it. It's going to be in a position that's more advantageous to the offensive side, and so a lot of times you can't even use his gadget in those kinds of situations. And so allowing Warden to have access to this gadget would make his job a lot easier. He'd be able to use it appropriately for the situation that it requires, and would be a pretty significant upgrade to his overall kits. The reason why I'm not 100% sold on this is, first of all, I feel like it would muddy the waters between offense and defense. I think each team needs to have their differences. Second of all, I think that this would be incredibly difficult to actually defend the objective once you've actually planted the diffuser. Can you imagine how hard it would be? You see the smoke screen go on down. What do you do as the offensive side? Do you just kind of spray in the general area? You could try to do that, but while you're doing so, you have Warden's teammate just defuse the actual objective, and then he's able to see anyone that tries to retaliate. It's basically the reverse, but for defense, and that doesn't sound like a dynamic that I want to have. And then thirdly, I think there'd be better ways to actually improve his gadget that wouldn't just completely flip the tables into the defensive team's favor. Now, if Ubisoft does want to introduce this kind of dynamic into Rainbow Six Siege, I think a better way of handling it would actually to have the operator's smoke having his gadget just simply be more dense. You guys know that when he uses his gadget, it's very wispy. You can usually see straight on through. But if it acted like the actual smoke nade that was available to the offensive team, but still, of course, had its other capabilities, then that would actually require a bit of teamwork. You guys know I really like it when there is some interplay between operators, and so if you do want to be able to retake the objective, having a smoke Warden combo could be a really interesting new dynamic that they could kind of introduce. That would be another way they could handle things. Overall, though, I gotta admit, we might be jumping to conclusions here, and it might be too early to tell if Warden does need to see any significant changes because he hasn't even gone live for everyone. He is a brand new operator. He is definitely going to take some time to get used to, and so maybe in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months, some strategies will pop on up, and he's a really viable option on some maps. We don't know right now, but I don't think that giving him access to smokes is necessarily the right way of going about it. The next question comes from Alex, and it is, what is your opinion on the new Rainbow Six game that should be announced at E3? I honestly would not be surprised if this is actually a thing. So if you're not aware of what Alex is referring to, not too long ago, there was a leak, which seems to be a theme with this most recent E3. Everything is getting leaked right now, where apparently Ubisoft is working on a side project, which is essentially taking the Outbreak DLC that we played about a year ago in Rainbow Six Siege and making its own game. If it's anything like the Outbreak content that we played a year ago, you're gonna pick a couple of operators with different abilities, try to make your way and survive through a bunch of zombie hordes that have all their different abilities and make it to the end. And if there is a story along with it, it could be quite satisfying. Now, the reason why I think this actually has some credibility is that I think it would be pretty puzzling for Ubisoft to spend as much development time as they did. I think it was rumored, or they stated that they spent a year on Outbreak, to spend all that time on that content and then not use it further because they said that they had no plans of actually reintroducing it back into Rainbow Six Siege would be kind of odd. Now, I don't believe that it was a complete waste because I do think that people enjoyed their time when this content was available, and they were even able to reuse some of their assets. The Behemoth Smash, for example, that flung you to the ground, that is the same animation for Nomad's gadget. But even still, it would seem quite puzzling for why they would put so much effort into this and not reuse it further. And so if I had to take a guess, the entire Outbreak event was probably just a test bed to see if this was something that they wanted to pursue. Not only to gauge player feedback, but just to see if this was something that was feasible or was a fun game mode. If I remember right, and something that might lend credibility to this leak is that there was a survey not too long ago that was asking questions about Outbreak. Did you enjoy it? Would you pay money for this kind of content for like a side project, a side game? And so maybe they were once again trying to gauge interest in something like this in the future. And so all in all, I'm really excited to see if this is something that is revealed at E3. They could add in a cool story mode, they could add in way more variety of different zombies or things to go against, and if done properly, this could be a really fun spin-off Rainbow Six game, but obviously we are gonna have to wait and see in the next couple of days. The next question comes from Aaron, and it is, what are your thoughts on the reveal of the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order gameplay? Well, I will admit that I wasn't blown away by the presentation. I am still really excited for the game because I just simply want to have a Star Wars single-player story that's made by Respawn. I love what they did with Titanfall 2, so I have faith the actual story is going to be decent here. And the gameplay, while I wasn't completely sold on it, does seem intriguing. It does seem to be sort of a mix of something like Dark Souls, Sekiro, maybe some God of War in there, for example, but everything really seems slow. Now, maybe this is just simply because it's a presentation, they had it on the easiest difficulty, but a lot of the animations and the way that everything was moving around seemed really slow and sluggish. Now, there were some moments that were amazing. For example, when he used his forced time manipulation, I don't know what they're gonna call it, but where he essentially stopped time briefly. There was the blaster shot mid-flight. He then grabbed the trooper, put him in front of the blaster shot, and then took him out because of that. Like, that was incredible. If they're able to have more of that, I think the game is gonna be quite satisfying. But then there was also a lot of moments that just didn't seem like they were fully finished. Now, obviously, this is partially due because the game is an alpha. Maybe they were on a very easy difficulty just to show off the game, but to see the way that the other AI and the other characters were moving around, it just didn't seem as fast-paced as I feel like it needed to be. If you compare it to something like Dark Souls or Sekiro, everything is nice and smooth, things are really fast and snappy, and this felt very clunky and janky. One thing that is worth noting, though, is that this is the same response that people had with Doom 2016 reveal at E3. Everything was very slow. People were not really too happy with what they saw in that trailer, and that might be what's going on here. They may have slowed things down just to kind of really show off what they were going for. It isn't necessarily the best representation of the gameplay. And so all in all, while I'm still really excited to get my hands on the game, I feel like the only way we're really gonna know if it is any good is to get our hands on it. These kinds of games are difficult to gauge based off of a trailer itself. You're only really gonna know if it's satisfying, meaty, and the controls feel responsive if you're actually playing the game, and I have a feeling that is gonna be no difference here. The next question is, what do you think about the pick and ban in ranked? It seems as though I never get to play some of my favorite operators like Legion and Blitz. Well, I definitely do sympathize with you. I'm right there with you when it comes to Legion. He's one of my favorite operators. I love his playstyle, but at the same time, I can see why he's getting taken out of the rotation because he can be quite frustrating to deal with on the offensive team. That said, though, I do think that the pick and ban system is going to be a great improvement to ranked overall. Not only because it now finally gives players the tools that they need to change the meta in a meaningful way, the way that they want it to be changed. If they have a specific strategy on a map which doesn't really work because of a certain operator, they can just remove that operator from the pool. I really like that dynamic, but also because it's going to force players like you and me to actually adapt and have a wider roster of characters that we're comfortable with. Rainbow Six Siege thrives off its variety, and only using one operator, and that's the only one that you're good at, is something that you should try to avoid. You want to grow and expand. Having a wide roster that you can kind of use at any given moment depending on the objective or the map that you're playing on is really important. That's how you get better as a player. And so just in general, while I do get where you're coming from, it can be quite frustrating, especially if you do want to play as Blitz. I think he is going to be one character that isn't going to see much play anymore because of this new system. I do think that it is going to be good for ranked overall. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's episode of Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Are you really looking forward to the new Star Wars game? Let me know down below in the comments. As always, if you'd like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until next time, guys, have a good one and take it easy.